What's up, everybody? This is Marcelo Unda for another episode of Inside the Pylons. I wanted to recap last night's NFL draft, also break down any projections that we may be considering be able to see today in this evening's draft for rounds 2 and 3. I know it's been a long time, but I wanted to try something different. I'm going to be trying to upload some YouTube streams and also update the podcast. So make sure you subscribe on the YouTube with Inside the Pylons, and also search on your Apple Podcast and search Inside the Pylons. Turn on the notifications so anytime you get anytime the episode is updated, you can always get it on your phone. And I'm going to try to do a lot more of these. They may be a little bit shorter than usual, just so that way, just putting out more content, just trying to see how we can try to expand the Inside the Pylons brand. All right. So tomorrow, or as far as, let's just dive right into it. Last night, the NFL draft, I felt like with ESPN doing everything virtually, it went really well. No glitches or issues. There was a couple mistakes by Roger Goodell, mispronouncing and reading off the teleprompters. It was pretty clear. The whole fan experience, was obviously green screen at his home. However, I did think that it was really cool to see the fans joining like on a Zoom call. Thought that was pretty neat. And then the stories about everybody that was drafted, it was really nice. I felt that it started off very slow, but however, once it started getting through probably the teens and towards the end, it was wrapping up pretty fast. Hopefully they can move forward pretty quickly moving forward. So basically to start off the night, Joe Burrow goes number 1 to Cincinnati. And then you have Chase Young going to Washington and Tua going to Miami. Actually, the Giants were able to pick 3, and they were able to get their preference and guys, but those were basically the primary players that were expected to go up early. Some of the surprises early on that I thought was Isaiah Simmons falling to 8 in Arizona's lap. Thought that was a pretty good fit. I did think they would get another wide receiver just to pair up with Kyler Murray, but I understand not doing that, being the fact that they traded for DeAndre Hopkins, and they do have a lot of receivers already. And I think it'd be best to go ahead and grab a defensive player so that way they can bulk up that defense and hopefully try to get better in the long haul. Another surprise by me, who I thought was the best receiver in the draft, was CeeDee Lamb, falling all the way to 17 to the Dallas Cowboys. I think they're going to have a lot of playmakers on that offense once Dak signs his contract and decides to come back to the team. That's going to be the major concern as to whether or not Dak Prescott's going to sign his contract or not. And so I'm trying to think of other things that may happen, but I think the big thing is just diving right in with the New Orleans Saints draft. Going into it, I was going to be pretty excited that whether or not that he addressed linebacker or wide receiver. By the time it got to the 24th pick, my top 5 wide receivers were basically gone. I should say top 4. I had Higgins in my 5, which was, you had CeeDee Lamb, Judy, Riggs, and Jefferson. And I had a feeling they would all be gone by then, and I didn't want them to reach and grab another receiver if it was anybody of those 4. Obviously, the linebacker concern was going to be for Kenneth Murray and as well as Patrick Queen. Kenneth Murray slid all the way to number 23. It looked like we were going to get him. However, the LA Chargers traded up in front of us, were able to snag and snake us, which was pretty heartbreaking just because of it looked like everything was going to fall line in place. But at the beginning of the draft, I didn't expect Murray to be there. So I think I kind of got emotion to the fact that it was like, oh, this might actually be happening. I was actually quite surprised that they passed on Queen. I thought he was going to be a good fit. But I think the major concern is the inside linebacker position for the Saints defense. On our roster, all we have is Kiko Alonso and Craig Robertson. Kiko obviously was a trade from Miami. He hasn't been able to stay very healthy in his professional career. He's a good, smart player, and then also Craig Robertson, even though he has established a role on this team, he's not he's not going to be our starting linebacker moving forward. So the Saints need to address that as a position of need going into today and this weekend for the rest of the draft, so that way they can address the position and moving forward. Also, you want to add depth in the position because Alex Anzalone has had dealt with some injuries in the past, and you want to be able to have depth at the whole linebacker position. So let's kind of go back to the draft whenever the Saints were on the clock. They ended up taking Cesar Ruiz, center out of Michigan. Not a sexy pick. I feel like that's the narrative that's been going around. Nobody wanted to wait that long to take an interior lineman, especially after in the offseason, the Saints signed Andres Pete, and to me, at a long-term deal, making him one of the highest paid guards. I felt that based on his play and his health, Andres Pete hadn't been able to, perform at that type of caliber with his salary. I do understand that his market is, it is what it is. It's his turn to get paid. And also that there wasn't very much of a, opportunity to replace him. And you would think that if they signed him to a long-term deal in the offseason, that they most likely didn't like the candidates within the draft. And according to Sean Payton, it felt like that, and Mickey Loomis, that it felt like that they felt that Ruiz was a good caliber player who can start, and they do expect him to start or at least compete for the center guard position. I know last year they drafted McCoy to play center, which he started all 16 games. However, they have mentioned that McCoy could slide over to guard and allow Ruiz to play center. So then what does that bring us to Larry Warford? Well, Larry Warford is our starting right guard. He's currently on a 1-year deal. And apparently last night, Sean Payton was saying that, Warford's going to have to be ready to compete. And there was news saying that Warford did not come in to expectation weight and was kind of sluggish starting the season. So I get it that it's like a future asset that they can be able to use, and you can never have enough offensive linemen. Look what the Cowboys did while they're doing their rebuilding process. What I was really upset about, I felt like I didn't know who this Ruiz prospect was, and you got to look back. The Packers traded up to get Jordan Love at 26. And it's unfortunate that we missed an opportunity where the Packers were willing to trade up, and we could have made a call to see if they would be willing to trade up to 24 so that way they could get Jordan Love. And had that been the case, we could have easily, I think that had we had the trade partner, we still could have gotten Ruiz if he was our top prospect a few picks later, and also get future assets possibly for this evening's rounds or later in the draft this weekend. So I'm upset with the pick. I had a chance to think about it. Yeah, I get it. It's an interior lineman. However, I just think that there's still some glaring needs, and it's just one night. So we got to get through the rest of the draft to see how the team addresses it. I am kind of curious to see what the team decides to do with Larry Warford if they decide to try to move him. Obviously, teams may see that it's an asset. However, he is an older player on an expiring contract. I don't know if team may give up a second pick or a third round pick in order to take on a veteran lineman that's on an expiring contract, and he's kind of getting up their age. I think he's maybe 31. So I'll have to look into that further. Initial thoughts. Let me see my notes. Just to kind of break down the Packers, I think that was probably the most shocking, other than, with CeeDee Lamb kind of sliding in. That wasn't that big of a deal, but I think Packers trading up just a few spots just so they could get Jordan Love. Apparently it was just so that way they could reach up and get them instead of the Colts or the Steelers. But, with the Packers, I think they're kind of in the same situation on offense that the Saints are. They have a superstar wide receiver. They could use a second weapon so that way to stretch their field. I understand that maybe their wide receiver, those top 5 receivers were basically gone, and they were hoping probably to land one of those. Most likely, it was not going to happen. I didn't expect a lot of the receivers to be there, but I wasn't really wanting to get a receiver anyway. But I think that was what they were hoping for. They realized that their prospect wasn't there, so they panicked. I shouldn't say they panicked, but they went ahead and took the best player available, and they felt like it was Jordan Love. Now, the question is, if you guys really think that he is the best prospect and he is the next coming of Patrick Mahomes who can sling the ball across the field, well, then next year, what do you do? Do you continue to sit Jordan Love again behind Aaron Rodgers? Or do you think like in, I guess, 3 or 4 years, he's got 3 years left on his deal, he signs somewhere else and he ends up playing a couple more years elsewhere, somewhere similar to the Brett Favre situation? It's quite unfortunate. Aaron Rodgers is a great talent. The Packers are a great team. I think, I'm just quite surprised that they were to trade up. They could have even gotten some defensive help on the opposite side of the ball. There was still Patrick Queen on the board. You had corners available, the TCU corner that went later in the draft with the Vikings. There is still some cornerbacks to choose from. So let's see if the Packers will be able to address it later in the draft. So we'll go with that. So basically, that's just my immediate reaction to yesterday. I'm going to try to put out some more of these videos and also some more podcasts that come out. Make sure, if you're listening to this on the podcast, make sure to go on YouTube and subscribe to Inside the Pylons. You can watch the video that I'm putting together for this podcast, and I'll make sure to get it out. And if you guys want to share your thoughts or your criticism of the Saints or anything other teams that what happened this weekend or yesterday, please go ahead and let me know. I'd be happy to bring it up in a discussion, or if there's any topics that you wanted me to discuss, I'll be happy to do that too. Thanks again for your support. Thanks again for listening and watching. Enjoy your football.